All right, so corporate Democrats in the House of Representatives have officially unveiled a new PAC that they're going to be using for 2022, not to protect their majorities or to fight against potential Republican curb stomping that is on the horizon, but instead they're going to be using this PAC to divert resources to protect corporate Democrats from potential left-wing primary challenges. So I got a good breakdown here from the Rolling Stone, who say exclusive top House Democrat unveils plan to beat back progressive rebellion. And it's kind of important to note here that the top House Democrat they're talking about here is the Democratic Caucus Chair, Hakeem Jeffries from New York. And this is kind of important because this guy has been floated out there in the past. Should Nancy Pelosi ever decide, I don't know, at the age of 865 to ever retire from the speakership position, that this guy could be a potential name that is thrown in the ring, basically, from the corporate wing of the Democratic Party to be a replacement. So kind of important to get a gauge of exactly where his priorities are. So let's just go ahead and check in with what he's been up to. So they say a pack of progressive candidates have crashed this year's Democratic primaries, hoping to unseat incumbents and push the party to the left. And Representative Hakeem Jeffries from New York, the fifth-ranking Democrat in the House, has other plans. And they say Jeffries and two of his House Democratic allies on Wednesday rolled out the first slate of endorsements from the Team Blue PAC, which is what they're calling this, I guess, a political action committee intended to protect incumbents from intra-party attacks. And the endorsements and their attendant $5,000 campaign contributions are the strongest demonstration of support yet from Jeffries and his allies, and serve as a warning shot to primary challenges seeking to unseat incumbents as Democrats fight to hold on to their fragile majorities. And again, these fragile majorities are not going to be protected by you going and, supporting these and diverting resources towards these corporate Democrats who are in safe blue districts, okay? That's not going to do absolutely jack shit to protect your majorities, okay? They're, in fact, diverting resources that could have actually gone towards protecting their majorities and using them for, basically beating back actual leftists who want to represent the American people instead of representing their corporate donors. But it gets even more laughable as we get into some direct quotes here from Jeffries. So he says, quote, "It's important to support effective legislatures, okay? Effective legislators for delivering for the American people in partnership with the Biden administration." So again, it's been corporate Democrats like Joe Manchin and, Kirsten Sinema and others like Josh Gottheimer, who we're about to get to here in a second, who have been the primary blockade to Joe Biden's main flagship social spending agenda, both the bipartisan infrastructure framework and the Build Back Better Act, okay? It has been consistently corporate Democrats who have been the blockade to those agenda items, while, people who he would call on the hard or radical left, people like AOC and Bernie Sanders, have been the biggest champions for Joe Biden's agenda, almost to a fault, okay? Almost to the position where they have completely given up leverage at multiple points where they could have tried to fight for more, but they basically gave Joe Biden the benefit of the doubt stupidly, and they've been the biggest fighters for his agenda. So again, just completely, ridiculous to suggest that it's corporate Democrats who have been working in partnership with the Biden administration. It's been the exact opposite of that in reality. But he continues here saying, "We want to support common sense members," common sense, he means corrupt members, "who are delivering for their districts and helping advance the Democratic agenda to create jobs and cut costs for their constituents," adds Representative Josh Gottheimer, okay? That was a quote, and he's, by the way, another co-founder of this Team Blue PAC, okay? Josh Gottheimer, who is saying, "We want to support common sense members who are delivering for their districts and helping advance the Democratic agenda." This coming from the guy whose main sticking point on Build Back Better was repealing the SALT cap. Okay, he wanted to get rid of basically a cap on a tax break for millionaires. Okay, this was his main tension point, basically, with the entire negotiations surrounding Build Back Better. This is what he had to say. He says, "I've got a few words for anyone considering altering federal tax rates for families in North Jersey. No salt, no dice." Okay, and by the way, this no salt, no dice thing that he's talking about right here, if he actually got his way in Build Back Better and got this included, it's literally just a handout to the wealthiest people within our country. Okay, you can see here within the data that lifting the SALT cap helps the rich the most, and literally 40% would go to basically the top 20% of Americans, and the top 1% would see 60% roughly of the benefits. So again, his main sticking point in the entire negotiations, when you had all of these other extremely popular policies like long-term care, modernizing the electricity grid, K through 12 schools, pathway to citizenship, universal pre-K, the civilian class Climate Corps, etc., free college, all of these things that were overwhelmingly supported by a bipartisan coalition of the American people. And yet his sticking point was not any of these policies whatsoever. His sticking point was a tax cut for millionaires. Okay, so again, not exactly the type of guy who is delivering for his district or actually representing common sense American values. Okay, this motherfucker is just corrupt, just like Hakeem Jeffries is literally just corrupt. And we're going to get to the funding mechanisms for this Team Blue PAC in a second here, and you'll see exactly how laughable their denial of corruption actually is. But they continue here with more details, saying the lawmakers united in an effort to provide resources to the increasing number of House Democrats who face primary challenges, and in particular from the left. Okay, they do not support anybody who is facing a challenge from the right. They're only protecting incumbents who are facing challengers from the left. Crazy coincidence, I guess, but they say that circumstance faces the 5 incumbents who received endorsements on Wednesday. So these are the first slate of endorsements, basically. First one on the list, none other than Shontel Brown, who is being challenged by Nina Turner. Okay, Danny Davis, Carolyn Maloney, Donald Payne Jr., and Dina Titus. And Davis and Maloney face opponents backed by Justice Democrats. Brown faces a rematch from Nina Turner, who had the support of the left wing group during a special election to fill the seat last year. So again, they're only endorsing people who are facing left-wing challengers. So again, this does have a very clear and obvious, blatant ideological component to this, and yet he's still going to deny that. He says that he doesn't object to primary challenges, and he launched one himself on the way to winning his Brooklyn-based House seat, and he insists that the PAC's efforts are not strictly a matter of ideology, noting that Davis, Payne, and Maloney are all members of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, just like he is. Okay, this is a good lesson here, because the Congressional Progressive Caucus has basically become this entire situation where corporate Democrats who take bribes from corporate America and then prevent progress on actual left-wing pieces of legislation that are supported by the overwhelming majority of the American people, these motherfuckers are not progressives. Okay, if this is what it means to be a progressive, then anybody could be a progressive. Nancy Pelosi could be a progressive. Okay, this is why the Congressional Progressive Caucus needs to have much more strict limits on who can actually be a member of this caucus. Okay, you can't possibly tell me that Hakeem Jeffries and AOC are in the same exact caucus with progressives. Okay, it's completely laughably ridiculous. They are not aligned on policies on virtually anything. Okay, they have some overlap on some of the very basic social reforms and shit like that, but even on those policies, it's like, well, what is the extent that you're willing to go and fight for those policies, right? It's very easy to be a co-sponsor of a bill like Medicare for All, for example, right? Kamala Harris was a co-sponsor of Medicare for All, and yet does she support Medicare for All? No, of course she doesn't. Would she ever fight for Medicare for All? No, of course she never would. And so it's the same situation, it appears like, with the Congressional Progressive Caucus, and it's not that surprising that they would decide as a collective, basically, to completely fold on the entire negotiations on Build Back Better, because if this is who the Congressional Progressive Caucus is made up of, then it's not the Congressional Progressive Caucus. It's just whoever wants to virtue signal and pretend to be a progressive and use that label to their advantage while they continue to serve the interests of corporate America. Okay, so again, we got to have some tighter limits on who can be a member of the Congressional Progressive Caucus if these are the motherfuckers who are getting included in it. But they continue saying its purpose, the PAC's purpose, Jeffrey says, is to protect incumbents' records from being distorted by the hard left, and he uses the term to separate himself from his detractors who see actions like these endorsements as evidence that he's not on their side. And they say, quote, "Why are the members of the hard left targeting progressive members of Congress and then trying to act as though they're engaging in some ideological contest against the rest of us?" Jeffrey says, and of course, it's worth noting that Team Blue's PAC isn't defending any incumbents from challenges from the right. So he's insisting it's not ideological. He's insisting that, oh, well, we're actually progressives just like you guys. Why would you even want to challenge us in the first place? Okay, just completely delusional and completely ridiculous. Okay, they're diverting resources that could have been going towards actually pushing back against right-wing primary challenges, or actually pushing back against Republican challenges to blue seats that are currently held in the House of Representatives. But instead, they're choosing to only target left-wing primary challenges while they gaslight everybody and pretend as if they're ideologically neutral. It's just completely ridiculous. This is literally just a corporate-funded PAC, essentially, that is going to be protecting corporate Democrats. That's all that this is, and we can see that with exactly where they are getting their funding for this entire project. So they say there's also the matter of corporate campaign funding, which all of the Team Blue PAC endorsed candidates accept. The PAC itself is primarily financed through corporate PAC money, and he says, I asked Jeffries whether that fact proves his detractor's point, and here's his response. Okay, this is the the most laughable point about all of this, okay? He says, quote, "Is there any evidence that their voting record and advocacy has been influenced by people who have contributed to them?" He says, pointing to their voting records, somehow we're supposed to theoretically believe that they're being unduly influenced because they're raising money from employee-supported political action committees. This is what they're calling corporate PAC money now, okay? They're calling it employee-supported political action committees. What the fuck are you talking about? And again, he's literally suggesting here, we're supposed to believe that theoretically when politicians take what are effectively bribes from corporate America through these dark moneyed groups and these super PACs, we're supposed to believe that those bribes have an influence on their legislating? What? I mean, like, he's literally suggesting that that's like a conspiracy, that that's something crazy, okay? I mean, listen, they think we're this stupid. I mean, they literally think that we are this stupid to not understand how the entire US political system functions right now, okay? And this goes for corporate Democrats, and it especially goes even more so for the Republican Party, okay? This is if anything is ideologically neutral, or if anything is, a bipartisanship in its true nature in the United States government, it is corruption, okay? This is how our entire political system works here. You have corporate America and billionaires and millionaires who funnel money into their campaigns, who give them promises of, cushy lobbying jobs after they leave Congress, and they effectively bribe these politicians, okay? That's what it is. Let's call it what it is. It's a bribe, okay? They're not just giving them that money for free. They're giving them thousands and thousands of dollars because they expect something in return for it. And so they take these bribes and then they turn around and they block progressives from actually legislating on behalf of the American people. That's the reality of who these corporate Democrats are. And it's not even that hard to figure this out. I mean, you would literally have to be completely ignoring the entire makeup of what this PAC is actually designed to be doing. The fact that they are only going after left-wing primary challengers, okay? The fact that they are only going to support people who accept these same bribes from corporate America on a regular basis, okay? They know exactly what the fuck they're doing, okay? This is how this corruption works, and this is how the Democratic Party is looking to continue on this trajectory to get absolutely obliterated by Republicans in 2022. And you kind of get the lesson here and get the observation that maybe they don't actually care that much about beating Republicans, because they are in fact more ideologically and on a policy basis more aligned with Republicans than they are with the actual left, okay? Because at the end of the day, both corporate Democrats and Republicans, they all represent corporate America's interests, okay? And that's not guessing. All you have to do is go and look at who funnels money into these people's campaigns. And even though Hakeem Jeffries wants to make it seem like it's something radical or crazy, go look at who's funneling money into their campaigns. If they're taking money from Big Pharma or the health insurance industry, then guess what? They're probably not going to be the biggest fighters for Medicare for all. If they're taking money from the fossil fuel industry, as Joe Manchin is, then they're probably not going to be that keen on tackling climate change, okay? This shit is not it's not up in the air. It's not a matter of question. This is just how political corruption works within the US system, okay? This is how it works, and we're seeing it on full display right here. Just completely pathetic effort, showing that their priority is on beating back this, progressive storm from the left instead of on actually beating the Republican Party.